Greetings, friends. You are watching the Ruslan Belov channel, and today we will be examining the situation in Ukraine as of September 15th, 2025. A significant number of very interesting events have taken place today, so let's get right into it. All right, let's now turn our attention to the situation on the ground. We will begin with the Zaporizhzhia sector of the front. This is the most dynamic and arguably the most crucial direction, at least for the autumn military campaign. The Russian army is advancing from the southwest and the east, developing its offensive with both the Dnieper and Vostok groups of forces. Today, regarding the western section, neutral cartographers confirm reports that the Russian army has successfully breached the defenses of the Ukrainian armed forces in the vicinity of Stepnohirsk and has established a foothold on its southern outskirts. Currently, a meeting engagement is underway. The Ukrainian side is attempting to eliminate this foothold, while the Russian side is striving to solidify its position and dislodge the Ukrainian forces from the area of high-rise buildings. This is the central part of Stepnohirsk. Whoever controls these few high-rise buildings effectively controls the entire city. At this moment, the main combat operations are concentrated in this area. On the eastern flank of the Zaporizhzhia direction, the Vostok group of forces is continuing its offensive. And today, new objective control footage has emerged, in which we can observe how units of the Russian army, specifically from the 5th Army, have cleared the settlement known as Olhivska. These frames were published this morning. We can see strikes being carried out on the settlement, the clearing operation in progress, and the use of drones. In the final frames of this video, we see another soldier. However, I would like to draw your attention to something. I might be mistaken, but if you look at the silhouette of this soldier, I believe it is a woman. I could be wrong, but it appears to be a young woman holding the tricolour of the Russian Federation. Based on this footage, we can conclude that the settlement of Olhivska has been completely cleared by the armed forces of the Russian Federation. We are adjusting the map accordingly based on these frames. This is how the map appeared yesterday. And this is how the map looks today, at the close of September 15th, 2025. I remind you that the eastern Zaporizhzhia direction is currently the most active, with the highest level of dynamic changes. Here, on a daily basis, or every 2 to 3 days, another settlement comes under the control of the armed forces of the Russian Federation. I will remind you that 3 armies are operating here: the 5th, 29th, and 35th armies of the Russian armed forces, which are advancing, so to speak, from south to north. The 5th, 29th, and 35th are advancing westward towards Velika Mikhailivka, Pokrovsk, Uspenivka, and of course Huliaipol. And just today, new information has emerged about the clearing of the settlement of Berezovy. It's possible that tomorrow or the day after, this information will be confirmed. And despite awaiting confirmation on Berezov in the coming days, the first footage from the direction of the Kalinivsky settlement is already appearing. Bombing strikes are being delivered, and artillery preparation has already begun. This means that tomorrow they will announce the clearing of another settlement, and the day after that, we will be discussing new villages. That is, the pace of the offensive in this area is unequivocally the highest. The Russian army is advancing along strongpoints, and the armed forces of Ukraine are unable to stabilize the situation. Next, we move to the western Donetsk, or Novopavlivka direction. A very important event occurred here today, one that almost no one has paid attention to, but we will examine it in more detail. We'll start with the fact that the armed forces of the Russian Federation have fully restored control over the entire western direction in the Donetsk region, confirming the words of the Ministry of Defense of the Russian Federation. I remind you that a few days ago, the Ministry of Defense announced that the Vostok group of forces had completely cleared the entire Donetsk region within its area of responsibility. This means that all these settlements, according to the Ministry of Defense of the Russian Federation, returned to Russian army control several days ago. Today, objective control footage has also appeared. However, today there is another small adjustment. In the area of the settlements Zeleny High and Novokatska, we are talking about this specific sector. Let's take another look. The map looked like this yesterday. Today, an update is being made, and what is most interesting is that this information was provided today by pro-Ukrainian cartographers from the Deep State team. Today, pro-Ukrainian sources report that the armed forces of the Russian Federation, after restoring control over Zelenyi High and Novokhatske, advanced further north, crossed the Vovcha River, and entered the territory of the settlement of Ivanivka. And according to pro-Ukrainian cartographers, several buildings along Vatutin Street are under the control of the armed forces of the Russian Federation. In reality, this is an attack that, by all appearances, the Ukrainian side simply missed and did not notice. This is a crucial moment. We all expected that most likely the Russian army would not even plan to cross the Vovcha River in its entirety due to various difficulties, and would instead move along the river to the west, from the side of the Mokry Yali River all the way to Huliai-Pole. But now we see that it is possible the Russian army will attempt to clear the settlement of Ivanivka, attacking and storming it from the south. They have already managed to cross the river in one location. Now everything depends on whether the Ukrainian side can stabilize the situation here and push the Russian units back. Because if they fail to do so, the Russian army will advance along the settlement until a solid bridgehead is established on the Ukrainian side of the Vovcha River, which will include not only the settlement of Ivanivka, but also the settlement of Filia, as well as the forest area located between Filia and Ivanivka. This will become a very powerful bridgehead on the Ukrainian side of the Vovcha River, and from this bridgehead, the Russian army will be able to advance north, as well as northwest, to encircle Novopavlivka, and northeast to encircle the settlements of Havrilivka, Mala Mykolaivka, and Prosiana. In other words, this collapse in the Ukrainian defense could lead to extremely serious consequences for the armed forces of Ukraine. Next, we move towards the Pokrovsk agglomeration, where fighting continues. But it seems as though today there has been some kind of titanic shift in the course of the battle. First of all, both Russian and Ukrainian sources, almost in unison, have been reporting extraordinary successes. Today, pro-Ukrainian sources from the 1st Corps of the National Guard reported that the settlement of Papankivka was completely cleared by the Ukrainian army. According to them, by the end of September 15, 2025, the armed forces of Ukraine had taken control of the settlement of Pankivka and this stronghold. This situation may indeed reflect reality. Footage has been published from the southwestern part of Lyman-Siversk. Here we can see Russian assault troops on 4 motorcycles trying to rush into Lyman-Siversk. However, right at the entrance, they are ambushed, which confirms that this part of Lyman-Siversk is firmly under control. On the other hand, this same information confirms that the northern outskirts of Novotaretsk remain fully under Russian control. Let me remind you that recently, pro-Ukrainian mapmakers claimed that Ukrainian forces had almost reached the central part of Novotaretsk. But these videos prove the opposite. In this way, we can sort through the reports published today by the Ukrainian side. The Shakivsky pocket is gradually expanding. Meanwhile, according to pro-Russian sources, very reliable cartographers have reported that the Russian army has managed to restore strategic positions in certain areas. According to these analysts, Russian forces re-entered the settlement of Novodonbass, taking its southeastern part. Maps reflecting this situation have been published today. Additional reports indicate that Russian forces once again broke into Zolotai Kolodets and brought most of it under control, setting up something like a circular defense and holding their positions against Ukrainian counterattacks. The Russian army also re-entered the southern part of Hruske, and its units are advancing west of this settlement. In other words, very serious updates are being published by pro-Russian sources, and clearly not without foundation. We can see that some sort of shift has indeed occurred. Both sides are focused on their objectives. The Russian army is trying to clear the second line of defense near Dobropilya, while the Ukrainian side is attempting to cut off the salient through Shakov, Novoshakov, and Nove Ekonomichne. Both sides are maneuvering in a meeting engagement. But one thing is clear, very soon a turning point will come, after which the situation will unfold exclusively in favor of just one side. For now, on some sectors it favors the Russian army, on others the Ukrainian forces. A little further south, neutral cartographers report that over the past few days the Russian army has steadily expanded its presence along the line of Mykolaivka and towards the settlement of Mirnohrad. At the very least, attacks are ongoing here by Russian units, aiming to clear strongholds, ventilation shafts, and mines located between Mykolaivka, Balakan, Kazatske, and Lyman-Siversk. Fighting is currently raging for this section of the front. Based on the reports we are receiving from this direction, the initiative is entirely in the hands of the Russian armed forces. As for the southwestern encirclement, there are numerous geolocations confirming very high Russian activity on this sector. Possibly after regrouping, the Russian army has again decided to go on the offensive in the southwestern and southern approaches to Pokrovsk and its agglomeration, in order to draw as many Ukrainian forces as possible away from counterattacks in the breakthrough zone. All roads, as we can see, are under complete fire control from Russian drone operators and FPV drones. The Ukrainian army is taking heavy losses trying to redeploy reinforcements here. Next, we move toward the settlement of Kostyantynivka. Today, Ukrainian sources published very interesting footage showing new equipment delivered to them. A device capable of intercepting a drone's signal. On these shots from Kostyantynivka, we see a Russian drone flying into the settlement, apparently for a strike, when suddenly its signal is intercepted and the drone is suppressed. Ukrainian formations are now being supplied with such devices to hold the defense and disrupt Russian FPV operators. Yet despite all this, the Russian army continues to make gradual advances. Today, according to some cartographers, Russian forces managed to expand their presence in the southeastern area of the Kostyantynivka dachas. These are the adjustments being drawn today. Over the last 5 days, we've seen continuous updates, and it's clear that the southeastern pocket has essentially been eliminated. Perhaps small pockets of resistance remain, but Russian forces are gradually clearing them out. And this mopping up will likely be finished soon. After that, the Russian army will switch to closing the matter of the Klebenbeik pocket once and for all. Now, moving to the Siversk sector of the front. Today marks a crucial battle for the Lyman-Siversk defensive line. Russian forces have breached this defensive monolith near Yampil. New footage of objective control confirms this. Yampil 2025. The settlement is completely engulfed in fires caused by heavy artillery preparation ahead of a likely assault. The town is ablaze, and fierce fighting is underway here. Russian troops are breaking through the Ukrainian defenses. Today, even pro-Ukrainian cartographers from Deep State published an update, expanding the grey zone to cover the northeastern part of Yampil. According to them, Russian forces are already operating in this area, trying to push Ukrainian troops into the central and southwestern parts of the settlement. If Russian forces succeed in fully clearing Yampil and reaching its southern outskirts, this could collapse the front line. Russian units would wedge into Ukrainian defenses along the Lyman-Siversk line, and from Yampil, the Russian army would establish complete fire control over all movements and supply routes running from Sloviansk and Kramatorsk toward Siversk. The fall of Yampil would mark the beginning of the battle for Siversk itself. Next, on the northern Kupiansk axis, Russian forces have made advances in the northwestern part of Kupiansk. Ukrainian sources have published footage showing FPV drone strikes on Russian positions in this area, including near the local hospital. The hospital is clearly visible on both the video and the map. The strike was likely against Russian positions. But these videos confirm that Russian units are steadily advancing in the northwest, aiming to cut off Ukrainian forces on the eastern bank of the Oskil River from supplies and from the main territory. The Russian advance continues. And that's all for today, dear friends. Thank you for watching. Don't forget to subscribe, like, and take care.